On the morning of May 2nd, 1917, a 4-year-old girl walked down the hallway of the Plaza Hotel's 5th floor. Her name was Barbara Woolworth Hutton. She wore a white nightgown. Her feet were bare against the cold marble floor. She was looking for her mother. The suite was quiet. Too quiet. The servants hadn't arrived yet. Her father wasn't home. He was never home. Barbara pushed open the door to her mother's bedroom. The curtains were drawn. The room was dark. But Barbara could see her mother lying in bed. She walked closer. "Mama?" No response. Barbara climbed onto the bed. She touched her mother's arm. It was cold. "Mama, wake up." She shook her, gently at first, then harder. "Mama! Mama!" Edna Woolworth Hutton was lying perfectly still. She wore a white lace dress embroidered with gold irises. A double strand of pearls hung around her neck. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing. Her skin was the color of marble. Barbara shook her mother's shoulders. She called for her. She screamed for her. Her mother didn't move. In that moment, standing on her mother's bed in the Plaza Hotel, 4-year-old Barbara Hutton's childhood ended. The official records would claim that Edna died of mastoiditis, an ear infection that spreads to the air cells of the skull behind the ear. The coroner, David Feinberg, declared that an autopsy was unnecessary. The coroner's files were later reported as misplaced. They were never found. The truth, whispered through the Woolworth family for decades, was far darker. Edna Woolworth Hutton had swallowed strychnine crystals. She had laid down on her bed in her finest dress and her finest pearls, and she had waited to die. She was 33 years old. The Woolworth family allegedly paid off city officials to avoid an investigation, to avoid a scandal, to protect the family name. The newspapers reported that a maid discovered Edna's body. It was a lie. Barbara found her. A 4-year-old child, alone, shaking her dead mother, trying desperately to wake her up. That single moment would define the rest of Barbara Hutton's life. Every decision she would make, every marriage she would enter, every drug she would take, every $1 million she would spend. It would all trace back to this morning, to this room, to this moment. A little girl standing on her mother's bed, realizing that her mother had chosen death over staying with her. The trauma would manifest in anorexia that would waste her body for 46 years, in barbiturate addiction that would turn her into a zombie, in 7 desperate marriages to men who didn't love her, in a $1 billion fortune spent trying to buy what money could never purchase. Love, connection, the feeling of being wanted. Barbara would spend the rest of her life searching for someone who wouldn't leave her. She would never find them. But to understand how the richest little girl in America became the most tragic heiress in history, we need to go back further. Back to a failed shopkeeper in upstate New York. Back to nickels and dimes. Back to the beginning of a fortune that would become a curse. Act 2, the 5-and-dime king Frank Winfield Woolworth was born on April 13, 1852, in Rodman, New York. He grew up poor on a farm. His early career gave no hint of the empire to come. As a stock boy at a dry goods store in Watertown, New York, he was considered a terrible salesman, awkward with customers, shy, uncertain, but young Frank had a gift. He could arrange a window display better than anyone. He understood visual merchandising instinctively, and he had an idea that would change American retail forever. In February of 1879, Frank Woolworth opened his first store in Utica, New York. He called it Woolworth's Great 5-Cent Store. Everything in the store cost exactly 5 cents. The store failed within weeks. Most men would have quit. Frank Woolworth tried again. On June 21, 1879, he opened a second store in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. This time he added 10-cent items to his inventory. This store succeeded, and Frank Woolworth never looked back. His innovation was revolutionary. He bought directly from manufacturers, eliminating middlemen. He established fixed prices that eliminated haggling. He introduced self-service display cases. He made quality goods available to working-class Americans at 5 and 10 cents. The formula proved irresistible. By 1889, he operated 12 stores. By 1900, he had $50 generating over $5 million in annual sales. When the F.W. Woolworth Company incorporated in 1911, it encompassed 586 stores across America. Frank Woolworth was building more than a retail empire. He was building a monument to himself. On April 24, 1913, President Woodrow Wilson pressed a button from the White House to illuminate a new building in Lower Manhattan, the Woolworth Building. 60 stories, 792 feet tall, the tallest building in the world. Frank Woolworth had paid the entire $13.5 million construction cost in cash. That's approximately $430 million in today's money. For a building, paid in cash. Reverend S. Parks Cadman christened it the Cathedral of Commerce. It was a temple to capitalism, to American ambition, to one man's triumph over poverty. When Frank Woolworth died on April 8, 1919, just 5 days before his 67th birthday, he left behind over 1,000 stores across the United States, Canada, and Great Britain. His personal fortune totaled approximately $70 to $60 million. The company was valued at $65 million more. He also left behind a catastrophic estate planning failure that would destroy his granddaughter's life. Frank had drafted a new will shortly before his death that would have distributed his estate among his wife, 3 daughters, grandchildren, friends, and charities. He died without signing it. Under his old 1889 will, his entire estate went to his wife Jenny, but Jenny Woolworth suffered from advanced dementia. She spent her days rocking back and forth in a white wicker chair under medical supervision, unable to recognize her own family. When Jenny died in 1924, her estate had grown to $57.5 million. 2/3 went to her 2 surviving daughters. 1/3, representing their deceased sister Edna's share, went to 11-year-old Barbara Hutton. The girl inherited $26.1 million outright, plus an additional $2.1 million in stock from her mother's separate estate. In today's money, that would be approximately $950 million. Barbara Hutton, at age 11, was one of the richest children in the world. She was also one of the loneliest. HT3, the girl who had everything except love. Barbara Woolworth Hutton was born on November 14, 1912, in New York City. Her parents lived in a 5th-floor suite at the Plaza Hotel. Her mother, Edna, was Frank Woolworth's middle daughter, a woman who had inherited wealth but not stability. Her father, Franklin Laws Hutton, co-founded the investment firm E.F. Hutton and Company. He was a Yale graduate, impeccably connected, and by all accounts barely around. Franklin was a notorious philanderer. He cheated on Edna constantly. She knew. She spiraled into depression. She began her own affair with a man named Bud Bouvier, trying to numb the pain of her husband's betrayals. But nothing helped. On May 2, 1917, Edna swallowed strychnine crystals and lay down on her bed to die, and her 4-year-old daughter found her. After Edna's death, Franklin Hutton essentially abandoned Barbara. He relocated to California. He remarried in 1926 to a woman the family called Barbara's wicked stepmother. He left his daughter to be raised by relatives and servants. Barbara was shuffled between her grandparents' 60-room mansion in Glen Cove, Long Island, her aunt's home in California, and various boarding schools. Her grandfather, Frank, called her princess and surrounded her with the trappings of royalty until his death in 1919. But he couldn't give her what she really needed. Her grandmother, Jenny, lost to dementia, could offer nothing. Barbara attended expensive private schools, Miss Shin's in Los Angeles, Santa Barbara School for Girls, Miss Hewitt's classes in New York, Miss Porter's school in Connecticut. Her classmates picked on her. They called her names. They made fun of her because her father and stepmother were so neglectful. In her teenage notebooks, she wrote with devastating honesty, "I long for a friend, somebody to understand me, an intimate with whom to share my innermost thoughts and terrors. Deep down, I feel inadequate. I am ugly, fat, awkward. I am also dull. Nobody can ever love me." These weren't the melodramatic writings of a privileged teenager. These were the anguished cries of an orphan whose immense wealth served only to isolate her further. When Barbara turned 18 on November 14, 1930, her father threw her a debutante ball at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in New York City. The party cost $60,000. That's approximately $1.1 million today. This was 1930. The Great Depression had just begun. Millions of Americans were losing their jobs, their homes, their savings. And Barbara Hutton's party featured 4 orchestras, entertainment by Rudy Vallee and Maurice Chevalier, 200 waiters serving 2,000 bottles of champagne, 1,000 7-course midnight suppers, and party favors that included unmounted diamonds, emeralds, rubies, and sapphires. The public reaction was savage. Newspapers excoriated the spectacle as obscene. How dare the Woolworth heiress throw a $1 million party while Americans starved? The nickname attached itself to her that night. Poor little rich girl. It was borrowed from a 1913 Broadway play about wealthy parental neglect. Barbara would carry that nickname for the rest of her life. She would later describe herself as the most hated girl in America. She was sent to Europe to escape the press onslaught. She was 18 years old, fabulously wealthy, deeply insecure, and desperate to find someone who would love her. What she found instead were men who loved her money. HTIV, the first fortune hunter. When Barbara turned 21 on November 14, 1933, she gained full control of her inheritance. Her father, Franklin, whatever his failures as a parent, had proven a skilled money manager. He had grown her trust from approximately $28 million to $42 million through wise investments. He had even sold stocks before the 1920 crash, protecting her wealth. Barbara also received an additional $8 million from her mother's estate. Her total fortune, $50 million. Approximately $1 billion in today's money. No trust protections, no spending limits, full access to everything. In an uncharacteristic act of generosity, Barbara gave her father $5 million as a thank you. Then she set about finding love. She found Alexis Divani instead. Alexis was born in 1908 in Tbilisi, Georgia. He claimed to be a prince. He wasn't. His family were minor Georgian nobility at best. When they fled after the 1921 Soviet invasion, they simply adopted princely titles in Paris. The Divani siblings became known as the marrying Divanis. They married their way through high society fortunes like the Kardashians of the 1920s. Brother Serge married actress Paula Negri. Brother David married silent film star Mae Murray and drained her fortune so thoroughly that she filed bankruptcy in 1934. Sister Rusi specialized in engineering her brother's wealthy marriages. Alexis was already married to Louise Astor van Ellen, a member of the Astor family and Barbara's friend when he met Barbara in Biarritz, France. According to biographers, Rusi deliberately set a trap. She timed witnesses, including Louise, to catch Alexis and Barbara in a compromising position. Barbara fled to Paris to avoid scandal. Then Rusi blackmailed her. Marry Alexis or face negative publicity. The wedding on June 22, 1933, at the Russian Orthodox Cathedral in Paris became a worldwide media spectacle. Over 8,000 people gathered to watch. Barbara's father provided a $1 million dowry. After Barbara turned 21 5 months later, Alexis gained access to her full inheritance. On their wedding night, Alexis looked at his bride and said, "You are too fat." Barbara stood 5'4" and weighed 148 pounds. That single cruel comment launched her into a crash diet of nothing but black coffee for 3 weeks at a time. She dropped 40 pounds rapidly. She had just developed anorexia nervosa. It would plague her for the rest of her life. Alexis spent millions of Barbara's money. A lavish home, a stable of 30 polo ponies, expensive clothes and jewelry, a custom gold Rolls-Royce Phantom. The marriage lasted less than 2 years. Barbara divorced him in Reno, Nevada on May 13, 1935. Alexis received $500,000 in cash, valuable jewelry, the Palazzo San Gregorio in Venice, which Barbara had purchased, the custom gold Rolls-Royce. Less than 3 months later, on August 1, 1935, Alexis crashed that Rolls-Royce on a coastal road in Spain. He died instantly at age 27. His sister Rusi, who found his bloodied body on a donkey cart, never recovered. She fell into depression and drug addiction and died of tuberculosis in 1938. Barbara had been free of Alexis for less than 24 hours when she announced her second marriage. ACTV, The Abuser and the Son, Count Kurt Heinrich Eberhard Erdmann Georg von Haugwitz Hardenberg Reventlow, was everything Alexis Medivani pretended to be. A genuine Danish nobleman of German descent, a World War I veteran with 2 Iron Crosses. Barbara met him in Germany in 1934, while still married to Alexis. On May 14, 1935, barely 24 hours after her divorce was finalized, she married the Count. She reportedly gave him $1.5 million as a wedding gift. On February 24, 1936, at Winfield House in London, Barbara gave birth to her only child, Lance George William Detlev Graf von Haugwitz Hardenberg Reventlow. The newspapers proclaimed him the world's richest baby. Barbara nearly died during the delivery. Lance was born with respiratory problems and asthma. The birth complications, combined with her anorexia, meant Barbara would never be able to have another child. Lance would be her only son, the one constant in her life, the only person she would truly love unconditionally. But the Count was a monster. He dominated Barbara through verbal and physical abuse. The beatings escalated until one savage attack left her hospitalized and put him in jail. In 1938, he was arrested in London for threatening his wife with bodily harm. He also convinced Barbara to sign an oath of renunciation, giving up her American citizenship. She became a Danish citizen in December 1937. The renunciation caused national outrage. Walter Winchell called her society's most outrageous child. The New York Times called her despicable. Woolworth stores faced boycotts. Employees wired her, demanding she order management to pay them living wages instead of starvation wages. Barbara turned to drugs to cope. Her cousin Jimmy Donahue had introduced her to Seconal, a barbiturate, when she was a teenager. Now she needed it to survive her marriage. She divorced the Count in 1938. The divorce took years to finalize through Danish courts. The custody battle that followed was one of the longest and bitterest fights in society history. On July 13, 1945, 9-year-old Lance was abducted by his biological father and taken to Canada. Barbara eventually regained custody, but Lance remained largely estranged from his father. Barbara gave the Count another $1.5 million after the divorce. In total, he had extracted approximately $3 million from her. She was 26 years old. She had been married twice to fortune hunters. She had one son. She had anorexia and a drug addiction. And she was desperate to find real love. She found it, briefly, with the most famous movie star in the world, Ake TV, the only husband who didn't want her money. Cary Grant was born Archibald Alec Leach in Bristol, England in 1904. By 1942, he was one of Hollywood's biggest stars. He met Barbara on an ocean voyage from New York to England in 1939. Multiple sources describe it as love at first sight. They married on July 8, 1942, at Lake Arrowhead, California. The press derisively nicknamed them Cash and Carey, suggesting Grant married her for money. They were wrong. Grant signed an extensive prenuptial agreement, refusing any financial settlement in the event of divorce. He waived all interest in her property. He always bristled at accusations of marrying for money. "I may not have married for very sound reasons," he said, "but money was never one of them." Of all 7 husbands, only Cary Grant left Barbara Hutton as rich as he found her. Grant also became a surrogate father to 6-year-old Lance. He took the troubled boy under his wing. The bond between them lasted beyond the marriage. Grant defended Barbara publicly. When critics attacked her, he invited them to meet her before making judgments. "The trouble wasn't her," Grant said. "People just can't disassociate her from her money, and they act like idiots around her." The marriage foundered on Grant's busy film schedule and Barbara's escalating addiction to narcotics. Barbara filed for divorce in July 1945, claiming Grant didn't like her friends. They divorced on August 30, 1945. Grant's settlement, $0. He refused all money, Barbara later said. "He was the husband I loved the most." Grant remained her friend for the rest of her life. But he also observed something that would prove prophetic. Barbara surrounded herself with a consortium of fawning parasites, he said. European titles, broken-down Hollywood types, a Maharaja or two, a sheikh, the military, several English peers, and a few tennis bums. If one more phony earl had entered the house, I'd have suffocated. Barbara couldn't stop collecting titles. She couldn't stop trying to buy love. Asex 7, the racing prince and the suicide attempt, Prince Igor Nikolaevich Trubetskoy, was born in Paris in 1912. Unlike Alexis Divani, his noble title was entirely legitimate. The Trubetskoy family were genuine Russian princes, with a lineage dating to the 14th century. Igor was also an accomplished athlete, a skilled skier, an amateur cycling champion, a race car driver who co-founded Scuderia Inter racing team in 1947. He purchased 3 of the first Ferrari 166S cars ever made. He became the driver of the first Ferrari to ever compete in Grand Prix motor racing at Monaco in 1948. He won the Targa Florio that same year. Barbara married him in Zurich in 1947. This marriage ignited Lance Revendlow's passion for racing. The 12-year-old boy watched Prince Igor compete and fell in love with fast cars. The marriage lasted approximately 4 years. Unlike Barbara's previous husbands, Trubetskoy filed for divorce from her. He genuinely loved her and tried to help her overcome her addictions, but he couldn't handle her problems. After Trubetskoy filed for divorce in 1951, Barbara attempted suicide. It made worldwide headlines. The poor little rich girl nickname was cemented forever. Barbara was 38 years old. She had been married 4 times. She had tried to kill herself. And she was about to make the most expensive mistake of her life. Act 8, 53 Days with the World's Greatest Playboy, Porfirio Rubirosa, was born in the Dominican Republic in 1909. By the 1950s, he was perhaps the most legendary playboy of the 20th century. A Dominican diplomat, a race car driver, a polo player, an alleged political assassin for the Trujillo regime. His romantic conquests reportedly included Marilyn Monroe, Ava Gardner, Rita Hayworth, Eva Peron, Ziza Z. Gabor, and countless others. His physical endowment became so legendary that Parisian waiters named oversized peppermills Rubirosis. He had previously married Doris Duke, the tobacco heiress, who was Barbara's lifelong rival and the only woman in America wealthier than Barbara. Doris gave Rubirosa polo horses, a Paris mansion, and a converted B-25 bomber. He crashed the plane within a year. When Rubirosa divorced Doris, he walked away with millions. Barbara met him at a polo game in Deauville in summer 1953. He was simultaneously conducting a very public affair with Zaza Gabor. They married on December 30th, 1953, in the Dominican Republic. A 10-minute ceremony. Columnist Phyllis Patel wrote, "The bride, for her fifth wedding, wore black and carried a scotch and soda. Barbara showered Rubirosa with extraordinary gifts, $1 million in cash as a wedding present, another B-25 bomber, a string of polo ponies, a coffee plantation described as the largest privately owned in the Dominican Republic, several sports cars, valuable jewelry." The marriage lasted 53 days. Rubirosa continued his affair with Zaza Gabor throughout. When Barbara divorced him, she gave him another $2.5 million. The coffee plantation, another bomber, the polo ponies and jewelry. Total estimated value over $3.5 million. In today's money, that's over $40 million for less than 2 months of marriage. Rubirosa died in 1965 after crashing his Ferrari into a tree while drunk. Barbara was 41 years old. She had been married 5 times. She had spent approximately $80 million on husbands who didn't love her. She would marry twice more. Act 9, the gay tennis champion and the purchased prince. Baron Gottfried Alexander Maximilian Walter Kurt Freiherr von Kram was one of the greatest tennis players of the 1930s. He won the French Open twice. He was Wimbledon finalist 3 times. He was ranked world number 1 in 1937. He was also gay. In March 1938, the Nazi government arrested him for having a homosexual relationship with a young Jewish actor. He admitted the relationship. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison. He served about 6 months before being released due to international pressure. Barbara had known von Kram for nearly 18 years when they married at the Ritz Hotel in Paris on November 8, 1955. Von Kram later admitted he married her to help her through substance abuse and depression. He was an angelic person who wanted to help people. The marriage was effectively a lavender marriage, one of companionship rather than romance. Unlike her other husbands, von Kram was independently wealthy and did not appear to be a fortune hunter. They divorced in 1959. Von Kram died on November 8, 1976, exactly 20 years after his wedding to Barbara, in an automobile accident near Cairo. Barbara's 7th and final marriage was to Prince Pierre Raymond Don Vinh Nha Champasak, a Vietnamese chemist and antique dealer she met in Tangier. His title was entirely fraudulent. Barbara Hutton bought him the title from the Laotian embassy in Morocco. They married on April 7, 1964, at Sumia, the Japanese palace Barbara had built in Mexico. Barbara was 50 years old and visibly aged. Her health was failing. Her advisors eventually orchestrated a permanent separation, specifically to prevent her from marrying again and risking more of her fortune. Barbara continued calling herself Princess Raymond Don Vinh Nha Champasak until her death. 7 husbands, 3 princes, 1 fake and 1 purchased. 1 count, 1 baron, 1 diplomat playboy, 1 actor. Only Cary Grant took no money. Only von Kram seemed genuinely caring. The total cost of her 7 marriages in settlements, gifts, and support likely exceeded 100 million in today's dollars, and Barbara was still alone. Act X, the palaces and the jewels. Barbara didn't just spend money on husbands. She spent it on monuments to her loneliness. In 1935, she purchased 12 acres in Regent's Park, London. She commissioned a 35-bedroom mansion called Winfield House, featuring 18th century French paneling, Art Deco marble bathrooms, and a cantilevered staircase. The garden was the 2nd largest private garden in London after Buckingham Palace. During World War II, the property was used by the RAF. In 1946, Barbara donated the mansion to the U.S. trip government for $1. President Harry Truman personally accepted the gift. It has served as the U.S. ambassador's residence since 1955. In Tangier, Morocco, Barbara acquired a palace that actually comprised 7 separate homes joined together. She spent summers there from 1947 to 1975. Her Tangier parties featured camels, snake charmers, belly dancers, and blue men from Morocco's high Atlas Mountains. She entered like a nomad queen, wearing glittering caftans while seated on a throne. Between 1953 and 1959, Barbara spent $2.2 million constructing a Japanese palace in Cuernavaca, Mexico. She modeled it after a shogun mansion with an exact replica of Kyoto's Kabuki Theater. She reportedly lived there only a handful of weeks over 3 years. And then there was the jewelry. The Hutton Medivani jadeite necklace. 27 gigantic jadeite beads of magnificent green color. Her father gave it to her at her first wedding. When it sold at auction in 2014, it brought $27.44 million. The Marie Antoinette pearl necklace, allegedly worn by the doomed French queen, Barbara's father purchased it from Cartier for approximately $1 million in 1933. The Pasha of Egypt diamond, a massive white brilliant diamond that Barbara had recut from 38 carats to 36 carats because she didn't like the shape. The Vladimir Emerald tiara, emeralds from the Russian Grand Duchess, purchased for approximately $1 million in 1936. Barbara's generosity was legendary and ruinous. She gave expensive gifts to total strangers. She wrote hefty checks on a whim at cocktail parties. She gave Van Cleef diamond earrings to her Spanish teacher. When a cousin admired the Marie Antoinette pearls, she immediately offered to give them away. Her lifestyle required maintaining multiple mansions, traveling with 30 pieces of luggage, and supporting an endless parade of hangers-on. Cary Grant had warned her about the parasites, but she couldn't stop attracting them or paying for them. Her longtime lawyer allegedly mismanaged her fortune while growing rich himself. After her death, he sold as much of her jewels, furs, and antiques as he dared while living like a millionaire, as Barbara's accounts stood nearly empty. She had started with $50 million, approximately $1 billion in today's money. By the end, almost all of it was gone. ATIC, the body that starved on her wedding night in 1933. Alexis Medivani told Barbara she was too fat. But the groundwork had been laid earlier. At age 9, the family butler told her she wasn't pretty and was too fat for anyone to be attracted to her. When she asked her father about it, he confirmed it was probably true. After Medivani's cruelty, Barbara went on a dangerous crash diet. She lost approximately 1/3 of her body weight in a very short time. She ate nothing but black coffee for weeks. During her honeymoon with Count Reventlow, she would burst into tears if her weight fluctuated even slightly. Her doctor diagnosed her with anorexia nervosa. The condition, combined with complications from Lance's birth, rendered her unable to have more children. In court hearings in the late 1940s, her attorney stated she was a semi-invalid weighing less than 80 to 5 pounds and confined to bed a great part of the day. At 5'6", that represented a severely underweight body mass index. In her final years, she was described as skeletal. The anorexia never ended. It slowly consumed her body over 46 years. But it wasn't the only thing consuming her. Act 12, the drugs that numbered the pain. Barbara's cousin, Jimmy Donahue, introduced her to Seconal when she was a teenager. It was a barbiturate sedative. Drug use intensified during her abusive second marriage, when she lapsed into addiction as a coping mechanism. By the 1950s, she was taking Seconal, codeine, Valium, morphine, and amphetamines. Her doctor stated it was critical that there not be any medication within reach of Barbara. If there was, she would take all of it at once. On one occasion, when a friend of Lance brought her 12 Seconal pills, she took them all immediately, risking her life. The pills helped her sleep at night and made her feel disconnected from reality during the day. She sometimes fell asleep at inappropriate times. Biographers described her as a zombie. You can see it in the photographs. She has this vacant stare. In her final years, observers reported her daily intake consisted of 20 Coca-Colas laced with vodka, IV shots with vitamins and amphetamines, cigarettes and codeine, Valium and morphine. After her divorce from Prince Igor Trubetskoy in 1951, Barbara attempted suicide. It made worldwide headlines. Multiple hospitalizations from drug overdoses followed. Some potentially intentional, some accidental. The trauma of discovering her mother's body at age 4 had created lifelong psychological damage. In her notebooks, she had written, "I long for a friend, somebody to understand me. Deep down, I feel inadequate. I am ugly, fat, awkward. I am also dull. Nobody can ever love me." In her final years, she became paranoid. She believed there was a plot against her. She believed her room was wired with secret listening devices. She also believed her deceased son Lance was in the room, just out of sight. 1813. The son who tried to escape. Lance Revenlow was born on February 24, 1936. Newspapers proclaimed him the world's richest baby. Left to be raised by nannies and boarding schools, Lance had minimal parental supervision. Barbara delegated his upbringing to others, following the pattern set by her own father. The crucial relationship in Lance's life was with Cary Grant, who became a surrogate father during his marriage to Barbara. Grant took the troubled boy under his wing. Their bond lasted until Lance's death. Prince Igor Trubetskoy's racing career sparked Lance's passion for fast cars. By his teenage years, Lance was racing Mercedes-Benzes in Southern California. He became friends with James Dean. On September 30, 1955, Lance had coffee with Dean at a restaurant approximately 30 minutes before Dean's fatal crash. In 1957, Lance declared he would build an American sports car to challenge European dominance. He founded Reventlow Automobiles, Inc., with Barbara's funding. The car was called the Scarab. Chrome-moly tube-frame chassis. Chevrolet V8 engine producing 365 horsepower. 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds. Top speed over 175 miles per hour. 1958 was a dominant season. Scarabs won every race they finished. On October 12, 1958, Lance's driver won the U.S. Grand Prix for sports cars at Riverside, defeating a factory Ferrari by over 20 seconds. In November, Lance himself won the Governor's Cup at Nassau, the first American to win such an international event in 30 years. By 1962, Lance had lost interest. His mother cut off funding. He quit racing at age 25. On Lance's attitude toward his inheritance, he once said, "You were born with brown eyes. I was born with money. It just makes life convenient." On Hollywood Society. Hollywood Society is like going down a sewer in a glass-bottom boat. On July 24, 1972, Lance died in a plane crash near Aspen, Colorado. He was 36 years old. He was scouting locations for a ski resort development. He was a passenger in a single-engine Cessna piloted by an inexperienced pilot with only 39 hours of flying time. A thunderstorm was brewing. The pilot flew into a blind canyon and stalled the aircraft at high altitude. The plane plunged to the ground. All 4 aboard died. The death of her only son sent Barbara into a state of despair from which she never recovered. Cary Grant, devastated, arranged the memorial service. He took some of Lance's closest friends in his plane to Aspen. Barbara did not attend. She was too ill and reclusive to travel. When Lance died, Barbara was, for all intents and purposes, emotionally dead. Act 14. The recluse who died alone. After Lance's death, Barbara retreated completely from the world. She spent her final years as a recluse in a penthouse suite at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel in Beverly Hills. She refused to get out of bed. Her cousin Dina Merrill and husband Cliff Robertson were among her most frequent visitors. Robertson recalled, "She was definitely alert, but you could see her frailness. It was a sad thing. She had a sweet, lost quality, a sensitivity. She was surrounded by sycophants, by people on her payroll. Barbara was a virtual cocoon. She refused to get out of bed. She required carrying everywhere. I can pay someone to do it for me," she said. She had broken her hip in 1971. She postponed treatment. The hip never properly healed. She was gradually going blind, though she didn't want people to know. Despite her condition, she always did her makeup and had her hair done daily. On May 11, 1979, Barbara Hutton died of a heart attack in her penthouse suite at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. She was 66 years old. 2 weeks before, she had been discharged from Cedars-Sinai Hospital after treatment for pneumonia. She died in virtual isolation. Her care staff were present. The mortuary attendants who prepared her body were not told she was the famous heiress. The funeral was held quietly and privately. Only 16 people attended. Probably the only major event of her life since her birth that was not widely attended by reporters. She was interred in the Woolworth family mausoleum at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx, reunited with her son Lance. Biographers claimed only $3,500 remained in Barbara's California savings and checking accounts. But when her will was probated in Bermuda, it revealed she had retained many of her most important jewels. The Hutton Medivani jadeite necklace alone would sell for $27.4 million in 2014. 4 years after her will was admitted to probate, not a single legatee had been notified. 1887, The Meaning of a Wasted Life. In 1987, NBC aired a television miniseries called Poor Little Rich Girl, the Barbara Hutton story. Farrah Fawcett played Barbara. The miniseries won a Golden Globe Award. It won 3 Emmy Awards. America was fascinated by the tragedy. The richest little girl who had everything except happiness. Barbara Hutton's story endures because it speaks to something we all understand. Money cannot buy love. Money cannot buy inner peace. Money cannot fill a void created by discovering your mother's suicide at age 4. Barbara spent her entire life trying to buy what she could never find. 7 husbands, countless hangers-on, legendary jewelry, palatial homes on 4 continents. None of it filled the emptiness, she once said. I inherited everything but love. She also said, if I was incapable of love, it was because I saw no love around me. About her husbands. I was always my own worst enemy, but my husbands, for the most part, were pretty rotten, except for Cary Grant. About money. Money alone can't bring you happiness, but money alone has not brought me unhappiness. I won't say my previous husbands thought only of my money, but it had a certain fascination for them, she wrote in her teenage notebooks. I long for a friend, somebody to understand me. Deep down, I feel inadequate. I am ugly, fat, awkward, nobody can ever love me. That belief haunted her for 60 years. Cary Grant said, the trouble wasn't her. People just can't disassociate her from her money, and they act like idiots around her. He also said, Barbara surrounded herself with parasites. European titles, broken down Hollywood types, a few tennis bums. If one more phony Earl had entered the house, I'd have suffocated. But Barbara couldn't stop. She kept trying, kept hoping, kept spending. She started with $50 million in 1933, approximately $1 billion in today's money. She died with $3,500 in her bank account. Where did it go? Divorce settlements to 7 husbands, gifts to strangers, palatial homes she barely lived in, jewelry she gave away on whims, lawyers who allegedly mismanaged her fortune, an entourage of sycophants who bled her dry. But most of all, it went to a desperate search for something money couldn't buy. Love, acceptance, peace, a feeling of being wanted for herself, not her fortune. She never found it. Epilogue. The Cathedral of Commerce still stands, the Woolworth building, still towers over Lower Manhattan. 792 feet of neo-Gothic architecture. The Cathedral of Commerce. Frank Woolworth paid for it in cash, $13.5 million, but the empire it represented is gone. The F.W. Woolworth Company closed its last American store in 1997. The five-and-dime king built a monument that would last forever, but the fortune he created destroyed his granddaughter. Barbara lies in the Woolworth family mausoleum in the Bronx, reunited with the son who predeceased her and the grandfather whose nickels and dimes built the fortune that became her curse. In her own words, I inherited everything but love. She had the means to buy anything in the world, except the one thing she truly wanted, someone to love her for herself, not her money. 7 husbands proved that was impossible. The poor little rich girl was finally at peace. But the price of that peace was a wasted life. A billion-dollar fortune squandered on the futile hope that the next husband, the next palace, the next piece of jewelry might finally make her feel loved. It never did. Barbara Hutton's tragedy wasn't that she had too much money. It was that money was all anyone ever saw.